Hey, welcome on Democracy, FP Wellman, coming to you from the post-Thanksgiving turkey nap suburbs of St. Louis. Things are really shaping up in D.C. right now. It's gotten crazier. The Democrats elected Hakeem Jeffries and his team just yesterday as the new minority leadership team, and what is a historic passing the torch to a new generation in D.C. in the Democratic Party. Meanwhile, our friends in the Republican Party are in a cage match to see who comes out at top as the speaker, or freaking anything for that matter. So I'm excited beyond measure to have a guest who has a front row seat to this lunacy for years, and especially the midterm campaigns that we just sort of completed. So we're not going to waste a lot of time today. Without further ado, let's get right to the show. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I am Fred Wellman, the host of On Democracy, the FP Wellman. You're in the right place. If you're looking for our show, you can find us everywhere from YouTube to Apple to Spotify. I think Semaphore, Pigeons, whatever you need to do, you can find this show somewhere. Our guest tonight is just fantastic. He's got so much freaking going on right now between, living in Colorado, and he's got some health things he's got to take care of and work. So we're going to get right to it. So our guest is the incredible Mark McKinnon, co-creator, co-executive producer, co-host of Showtime's The Circus, Inside the Greatest Political Show on Earth. Got some awards coming again this year, I think. Of course, you're a legendary political advisor, reform advocate, media columnist, television producer. In his free time, he skis a lot and he rides mountain bikes, which is probably why he needs surgery. You always find him in his travels, wherever he goes, he's on a bike or something like that. I had the privilege to meet Mark when I was, he was one of my instructors at Harvard Kennedy School, Mark. So welcome to the show. It's great to have you here with us. I appreciate you taking time for us.
Thanks, Coach. Well, as Lyndon Johnson said, you're pissing on my leg, but it's warm and it feels good.
That's true. Well, it's good stuff. It was fun. I went to Harvard's Kennedy School as still a lieutenant colonel in the Army. General Petraeus got a bribe I should get a graduate degree. That was his thing, if you remember. And so I was getting ready to head out of there and go to the Pentagon. I decided I was going to focus my studies on political communications. My theory being, if I'm working for 3- and 4-star generals, that's political communications. So one of us should know what we're doing. and that was, I think, your first semester you taught like a class. I think you go periodically back there and teach for a semester. You focus on political communication. It was freaking incredible.
Yeah, I had a feeling I might see you again after that. And I thought that the military services could use a lot more kind of talent that you have. And now I'm glad to see that politics is utilizing the kind of talent you have.
Yeah, funny how life goes, right? Here we are all these years later. It's 15 years later, I think. So, I always like to ask guests when we come on, Mark, how did you get here? I mean, we know where you are. I know you had 5 winning primary and presidential campaigns with Bush and with others. You've been in this game for a long time. Where did you start as young Mac McKinnon coming out of college? How did you get into this world?
Pretty accidental. I ran away from home in high school, hitchhiked to Nashville, banged around the music business for about a decade, ended up in Austin, Texas. And then I realized that on the trajectory I was on, I was going to be the second act at the Holiday Inn in Pflugerville when I was 50. So I got a little higher education and I got into journalism. I always loved to write. That's why I like music. I like to write music. Right. And I always loved politics. So I wrote about politics, and I was the editor of a newspaper there in Austin, and covered politics. And there was a very talented young reformer type who was a state senator who ran for the United States Senate in 1984. His name was Lloyd Doggett. He's actually still in Congress. He lost that race for the Senate, but he later won a congressional seat. But it was a cool race because for me, because it was my first one, but also because I got to work with James Carville and Paul Begala. Paul was a friend of mine at UT, at the University of Texas. And it was one of James's first campaigns, and he was a complete maniac and brilliant. And I learned a ton from him. Anyway, we won an upset race, upset primary, and then lost in the general. It was 1984, the Reagan year, so all the Democrats got crushed. But this is when I discovered you can fail upwards in politics, and I got a job with the governor, and then banged around some more, and then I ended up in Louisiana doing a race over there, which was really cool. A friend of mine, a mentor, said, if you think you know anything about politics, go to Louisiana and get your PhD. So I did that.
I learned that lesson.
And then I went to New York and worked in the sort of media consulting world, and worked not only all over the country, but I worked around the world. I worked in South America and Africa and some exotic places, because the guy I worked for was one of the very first people to export U.S. style campaigns to emerging third world democracies that had never had elections before. It was
Right.
it was a very interesting time and a lot of great experience. And then I ended up back in Texas and started my own firm. And then I worked initially for Hannah Richards, and then I crossed the bridge when George W. Bush came to town and started preaching about compassionate conservatism, which really hit a chord with me. And then I was just off to the races with Bush, and then later McCain, and then later the show.
Yep, and then and here and then Harvard in between. And what I loved about our conversation was, and I took a lot of what you taught with us, not to again pee on your leg, but what I found fascinating was I actually wrote a blog about it years later. But the basis of what you taught and has carried me through my political career too, and my Army public affairs and my PR firm that I did was that the storytelling hasn't really changed, right? A story is still the same. You have a hero, you have a obstacle to overcome, and you started the whole class with that way. And I always tell people the same thing: is like you got to tell a story. It was always the problem with the Army. I used to say, look, we're not telling stories effectively. We're briefing people, and we're losing the American public. And I think that's the basis of success in a lot of ways, right?
That was a real aha moment for me because I realized. At one point, after having worked as a songwriter, then in journalism, then in campaigns, and then in television, that the glue that connected all of that was storytelling.
Right.
And also the bigger aha moment was to realize just how much that applies to politics and campaigns. And the best example of that is the 2016 campaign. And there's sort of a classic narrative filter that you and I have talked about, which is, you establish a threat or an opportunity, you identify a victim, you identify the villain, you establish a solution and reveal the hero. And so when you look back at 2016, I could pick anybody off the street and I'd say, what was Donald Trump's story? And whether they voted for him or not, they'd say some version of "Make America Great Again."
Right.
The villains were Mexican rapists coming across the border, the Chinese bad trade deals, the media elites in Washington. The victims were hardworking blue collar Americans losing their jobs and their quality of life. And the solution was build a wall, tear up the trade deals, drain the swamp. The hero is Donald Trump. Some version of that you get pretty close to from any randomly selected person. You ask any person on the street what was Hillary Clinton's story, they wouldn't have a clue because she didn't have a clue.
Right.
Now, on paper, she was arguably one of the most qualified people to ever run for president, first lady, senator, secretary of state, on down the line, and thought about it forever. And yet, ironically, hadn't figured out the very first clue of running for office, which was first of all, project and communicate a clear rationale about why you're running, which she never did. And, she sort of admits that. She says, listen, my husband, it was the best in the world, and he was in terms of political communication. But she was a nerd. She was great on policy stuff. But if you just put out a bunch of really smart policy papers and never connect the dots for people, then you're going to end up where Hillary Clinton did.
Yep. And I was going to ask you next about this season, the circus and then the midterm. But I think that takes us right to a good place, which is DeSantis, right? DeSantis running for office. And a lot of people talk about DeSantis as the next big thing in the Republicans. He's going to replace Trump. But I tell people all the time, don't assume that, because the thing about, you just said it so clearly, Trump spent his entire adult life marketing Donald Trump, the brand, right? He knew how to tell the Donald Trump story. You may hate him or love him. Obviously I hate him, but you have to respect the game. The man knows how to market things, and that's his entire life has always been marketing a thing, and he ended up marketing himself very well. Ron DeSantis, well, people think he's got the bullying thing down, but the guy has zero charisma, right? And I'm not necessarily sure he has that marketing of Ron DeSantis talent. I think you dealt with him this year. I mean, do you see that too? It's not a handoff, one-for-one exchange in any way, shape, or form, right?
No, I mean, listen, I mean, he's got a lot going for him. I mean, he's pugnacious, and he has a real thumb on kind of the cultural pulse, particularly of the Republican Party. He's a really good attack dog. Yeah. But that's all well and good. But he's also. We've had him on the show before. We were in his debate prep in 2016, right, before they decided that nobody besides Fox News should cover his campaign. But it's a different ballgame when you do a presidential. It's a much bigger stage, a much hotter spotlight, and I think the most difficult thing for him is just going to be that he's got to start delegating. And basically his decision-making tree right now is him and his wife, and that's about it.
Yeah.
And I've talked to people who gone to work as like, an assistant scheduler and had to go through 3 weeks of interviews. And,
Wow.
you just can't do that on a presidential campaign.
Right.
And you got a retail politic too. I mean, you got to actually go meet voters, and one-on-one, Ron DeSantis can be pretty chilly.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so we'll see, we'll see. But I mean, listen, I say that, and I also think that he's Trump without a lot of the Trump baggage too. I mean, he's got an instinct. He's got a real instinct that, and listen, I mean, you can't argue with the numbers in Florida. I mean, Hillary Clinton won Miami-Dade County by almost 30 points, and DeSantis just won by 10. That's a swing of 40 points.
I mean, it's shocking the way it's gone, and he's very popular down there. I have family in Florida, and they freaking love him down there. And I think we dismiss him at our risk, like we dismissed Trump, 5-6 years ago. But by the same token,
I think so too. But I think there's also some other people that like Glenn Youngkin, I think is a really attractive candidate who's got a lot of potential. So there's other people out there, and as you know, there's a long way to go, and a lot's going to happen between now and then.
Yeah, and so back to where we're at now, a really unique thing yesterday. We saw the Democrats voted Hakeem Jeffries in. I'm sure you've met him. I had the opportunity to meet him in the summer.
I had him on the show a bunch. It's great.
Yeah, and he's just a terrific speaker. He's very engaging. He's smart as hell. My God. They engineered a very peaceful transition. I laugh because, as Will Rogers said, right, I'm not a member of any organized political party. I'm a Democrat. But we've almost seen, but on the other side, you got the Republicans right now in a cage match. I mean, the Democrats have engineered a pretty good passing the torch. And I mean, you've been doing this a long time. I mean, that's significant, isn't it? I mean, what do you think?
It's a little bit counterintuitive,
right,
on one level, because having worked, half my life with Democrats, half for Republicans, the one difference I can tell you is that when Republicans say march, everybody salutes. When Democrats say march, everybody jumps in a mosh pit.
Exactly.
But on the other hand, the thing that has struck me as really tone deaf, at the very least on the part of the Democratic Party, is that the logical demographics of the Democratic Party is younger and more diverse.
Right.
I mean, that's you want to fish where the fish are, and you got to give those fish the right bait, and the right bait is not necessarily 80-year-old, 76-year-old speakers and presidents. So it's just, when you look at the leadership of the parties across the board, I just thought it's nuts. But especially for the Democratic Party,
right?
Who are trying to, they think that the old. I think we've thrown the demographics as destiny myth out the window, and Trump had a big hand in that. But there's still, if you look at just kind of the policies and ideas of the Democratic Party, it's going to have a favorable attraction to particularly diverse and younger voters, and so their leadership should look like that.
Yeah.
And they engineered this peaceful transition, which is shocking to me. I give great credit to Hoyer and Pelosi. Yeah. The next big question is, will Biden do the same?
Right.
And I think it'd be terrific if he did. I think it's highly problematic if he doesn't.
Yeah, it's courageous. It would be courageous. It would be unique and courageous, I think, if he did. And
I don't know if you remember this, but during the campaign, he actually said that he was a transitional figure.
He did.
And so if he lives up to that, he'll pass the torch.
Yeah, and it'd be a remarkable thing. I mean, you see what,
and it'd be so much better for his legacy ultimately. It just
my God, did you see where Newt Gingrich was saying? Hey, you saw that today, right? Newt Gingrich saying, you got the Republicans are screwing up by not understanding how good he is and what his legacy is, and the successful he has had a very successful 2 years. And that's what's interesting too, is the Democrats have been in line for 2 years. We really thought there'd be cats and dogs with the progressive caucus and all, and there's been a little glitches here and there, like the letter to Ukraine, but for the most part, Speaker Pelosi kept the line. And we heard the rumors about Hakeem taking over the summer when I was in New York for an event, and to see it go so smoothly was really gratifying. But let's switch to the other side. I mean, we've got a cage match going on, right? I mean, it's they're shooting each other in the back. They're fighting over the Freedom Caucus is holding McCarthy hostage. I take great joy in that. I admit it freely. Where do you think this is going to settle out? I mean, this is a hell of a fight. And you got such a great perspective you hung out with a lot of these people over the summer. I mean, you hung out with, your colleagues did. Jennifer hung out with Marjorie Taylor Greene. I mean, where do you see this shaking out?
Well, I think the Republicans may have to admit in the long run that it's better to either be in the minority or have a big majority, but a slim majority is just death by 1,000 cuts. And yeah, I mean, because what happens is it puts enormous control and influence in the hands of a very few people, and the very few people are not consensus centrist types. They are people who are the Marjorie Taylor Greenes and the Matt Gaetzes. Those are the people who are going to be punching the buttons and directing where the party goes and what the policy is going to be. And so that's, Kevin McCarthy is just, we had David Jolly on, who's a former congressman from, Republican congressman from Florida, who actually put the bullet in McCarthy last time McCarthy tried this. And so he knows him really well. And he just said it's going to be the most miserable existence of any congressman in history, because he just gets it coming and going. And by the way, he may not be speaker.
Right. That's the thing.
This is all over. I mean, he's gonna sort of hand over his soul, and maybe not even, the devil may not deliver on the package.
Well, I'm happy with that. Him going down to Mar-a-Lago after January 6th was such a key moment in Trump kind of coming back, being put back into the leadership position of the party and all, and so I do fault McCarthy for that. So his twisting in the wind gives me great joy.
He's reaping what he's sowed.
That's it. You ride the tiger, or what is the leopard face eating all those? There's a million terms for it, right? And they're eating, and I think, with that in mind, with the Marjorie Taylor Greene taking power and all these folks in the mix, what kind of governing will they do? We already know they're talking greatly about all the investigations, Hunter Biden's laptop, et cetera, et cetera. It's going to be insanity.
Well, it's not. Yes, of course it's insanity, but it's also just strategically so misguided, because Republicans have such an opportunity. They had such an opportunity in this last presidential and threw it away.
Yeah.
They had, first of all, they had the historic wins at their back. They had the issue wins at their back on the economy, on crime, on immigration. That should have been a slam dunk, and yet because they're being so controlled by the extreme components of the party, that it's just helping them claw their way to the bottom. And what's going to happen here is that while there are lots of good ground to plow for Republicans on lots of different issues, including and especially the border, where Democrats, I think, are hugely vulnerable, that they're going to go off on this tangent of not only investigating Hunter Biden's son, but Anthony Fauci, the Homeland Security chief, just right down the line. It's going to be investigation city on matters that just don't matter to typical Americans. Right. They don't give a shit about investigating Anthony Fauci on where the virus started or some. That's not that's going to be a big, huge distraction. And the party should be listening to people like Gingrich and Rove about, get off that stuff and get onto the economy and issues that people care about. And like I said, but I don't think they'll be able to do it. I just think that they have cast their lot with the Greenes and the Gaetzes and the rest of the crazy crew. And they're in a position right now with great power and influence.
And we know there's normies, right? We know there's normie Republicans. There's, I think of my old Congressman Rob Whitman in Virginia 1, for example, who is just a regular dude, right? Do you think there's a danger, or even a chance that at some point traditional conservatives, the old school Republicans, will lose? With such a slim majority, it just takes a few people to caucus the other party, just to caucus with them, and it'll be interesting to see if they can hold this crew together. It's unlikely, I know, because I'm a dreamer, but it would be interesting to think. Do you think how will the normies handle this? Do you think?
Well, are
there any normies left? Right? I guess we start there, right?
If you're talking about a speakership that's going to be determined by 3 or 4 or 5 votes, if you got 3 or 4 or 5 votes, that's a lot. You can swing a mighty big bat at a mighty big ball. So. There's a real opportunity there. So in a weird way, you have kind of moderates who could potentially have some influence, as will the extremists.
Here in Missouri, I interviewed on the first season of the show Crystal Quaid, who is the minority leader, the House minority leader here. If you know Missouri state politics, you may not. It's a supermajority Republican right now. I think it's the second largest legislature in the country, by the way. So they got like 120, and so they don't. Supermajority means, as you know, they don't even need Democrats to show up. There's no law in Missouri. They need the other party to be there, so they can't do the whole board of plan to lead the state thing. The Republican Party here in Missouri can pretty much govern as they see fit. But interestingly enough, she's done a very effective job as a minority leader to get what they want, because there is enough of those normie Republicans that, especially last cycle where there was people, they literally had like 3 Republicans go to jail. They had to work with the Democrats, and so she fought a very effective campaign as a minority leader to get what she wanted passed. That was the kicker. She got great bills passed against the majority opinion, because enough of the centrist and the normal type Republicans were able to kind of bend over and vote with her. And the thing, I do you kind of see the same kind of situation. I can see the kind of scenario in the new Congress where they only need 4 or 5 Republicans every now and then to kind of come over to their side to kind of scuttle a bill or even pass a bill against the majority rule. Do you see? I think Hakeem Jeffries has that talent, or how do you?
Yeah, I mean, listen, they could, in theory, elect a Democratic speaker.
Right. I mean, yeah, it's
that's a hell of a threat that they can hold over the other Republicans. So, it'll be interesting to see. The one thing that I've learned about politics is you learn a whole lot more from losing than you do by winning.
Yes.
And if Republicans learned any lessons, which they sure should have, because they got their ass whacked, then there could be some pretty strong corrective winds blowing. I hope so, for the sake of the country and for the sake of the party.
Yeah, and we've got obviously you were down in Georgia quite a bit. You covered the race between Warnock and Walker quite heavily. We're facing the runoff in a week. How do you see that going? What are the winds blowing in your opinion right now? I mean, honestly, runoffs are all about turnout, right?
Yeah, I think you can stick a fork in it. I mean, the only rationale for a Walker candidacy in the very first place was this notion that it would be one more Republican to accomplish a Republican majority in the Senate, and that's gone. So the whole rationale for his candidacy is gone. And so, I still think it's possible he could win, but I think it's improbable at this point. I think Warnock's got a lot of wind at his back.
Yeah, I think we all kind of expected, and that was some of the predictions we made, is that the Republicans would flee. You wouldn't see the big push like there was for the runoff, just 2 years ago with Loeffler and Warnock, because simply there was more at stake then, and you had the giant rallies. Nobody's going. I think somebody pointed out today that DeSantis's governor's mansion is 20 miles from Georgia, yet he hasn't managed to make his way across the border to campaign for Herschel Walker. It does feel like he's been abandoned.
Unless you're really passionate about werewolves and vampires, I don't know.
That was amazing. Yeah, it's always something, and it's a remarkable thing to watch these things unfold. And as you know, we saw each other last in Georgia with Marcus Flowers and Marjorie Taylor Greene, and seeing these things unfold. It's been very interesting. So yeah,
how's Marcus doing?
Mark's is doing great, actually. We're just talking this morning, so he is not done.
That's the feeling I got. I think that man's got a future. I'm not sure what it is, but he's got a lot of talent, so I hope he sticks around.
He has some good ideas cooking, and he is not stepping off the stage. He's been actually working real hard for Warnock, helping him out. He just yesterday dropped off a $10,000 check for appalling Democrats for their get out the vote efforts. So,
well, I think he'd be a great statewide candidate. So.
Thanks. I agree. I won't argue that point. I think he is, and he's got a great future, and a very good, ran a clean campaign and ran a professional. I think that you saw that campaign up and close. It could have gotten real bloody, and I'll give Marcus credit. Marcus, as the candidate, gave us very strict instructions because I have to run this race a certain way.
He had some good help too.
I was proud of that. I mean, we made a conscious decision to run a clean. I think I told you this when we met. Is like we made a conscious decision to not go over the top and get ourselves in the mud. You can win, right? You know this. You can win dirty, right? And you can lose and also be losing dirty. We made a conscious decision to campaign. If we were going to lose, we're going to lose it with our heads held high, with our ethics and our morals, and do it in a way that was for purpose. And I think we did. I think we acquitted ourselves well in that. We never got too dirty. I really expected other people to show up. And I'll ask the last question is, it's something we've been chewing on quite a bit with the Marcus Flowers campaign, right? A lot of people beat us up for running that race when it was an R+35 district, right? It's the impossible win. It's impossible win. We consistently see Democrats and I think the major super PACs as well making these decisions of what are winnable races. Do you feel like we're ceding ground too much? I mean, a number I've been just obsessing over, which will come key in the next couple of weeks of the work I'm doing next, is the fact that 23 Republicans ran for the House unopposed, to include Paul Gosar. On the other side, only 6 Democrats ran unopposed, which tells me that the Republican Party has made a key decision. They're going to run everywhere, even if they're going to lose. Whereas our friends on the Democratic side and the progressive, and I mean the PACs too, the big PACs, including my old colleagues at Lincoln Project, sat out these races. I mean, what do you think that means? If you've been in politics a long time, do you feel like that's?
I think you should show up everywhere and play as hard as you can, wherever you can, whenever you can. I think the best example I can think of on that front is here in Colorado, where Boebert,
right,
who's as extreme as you get in the Republican Party. There's a recount going on right now. She won by 500 votes, and if people had paid more attention to that race, he would have won easily.
Right. No third parties. We had that with Marjorie Taylor Greene, right? Not a single third party, be it a PAC, super PACs, all these different ones, did a single ad against some of the most execrable people in Congress. He sat those out. A conscious decision was made that they were just winnable. And then here we are with Boebert almost winning it. You can't help but wonder if more parties had gotten involved and had put that push in to go after these people, because politics, right? You learn this lesson all your years. Is you just don't know what's going to happen.
This last election was a great example of it. I mean, everybody was wrong. They were wrong about 16. They were wrong about this one.
Right. And the idea, it keeps me up at night, Mark. I'm not going to kid. Paul Gosar, his own family says he shouldn't be elected, ran unopposed.
I didn't even know that.
There's gerrymandering. Davey Lesko ran. And the other thing we talk about a lot is we know that if there's an opposed race, that 1.5% more people show up. So I can't help if Katie Hobbs would have had a cleaner, a bigger gap, and all these other races had a bigger gap, if we had just run candidates so people turned out to race.
Well, that's a good point. If Gosar had an opponent, then Hobbs would have had more votes.
Yeah, and so it's one of the things that's been literally keeping me up at night in the last few days since the Flowers campaign and the Marjorie Taylor Greene victory. We did gain 10 points from. I remember the rule was there's only 20. No Democrat had ever broken 27% in the district. We did 35. I like to win, but I like to make progress too. But and that's the thing. We you run a good campaign, you turn out. The party. What I thought was fascinating was the party operations in that district were more energized. We gave them money from the campaign to energize them so they could organize better. Several party committees had not even met in person in like 2 or 3 years, and we helped them. If we do those kind of activities, maybe we won't win this cycle, but we'll win the next one, right? I think it is part of fight everywhere, right?
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate your insight as always. I'm not going to keep you long. I know you've got things to do. So you just got done with the season. You guys are up for some awards this season, right, for the Circus?
Yeah. Well, thanks. It's the remarkable thing about this show is, first of all, that it ever got made. I pitched it for 10 years.
Yeah.
And then we got the green light to do it. But I thought it'd just be, it was really designed to be about campaigns. So I thought it'd be one and done, or maybe come back 4 years later for the next presidential campaign. But 3 weeks into the Trump administration, they said, keep going. And I was at first skeptical. I thought, I don't know, it's Washington. How interesting could it be? Well, got pretty interesting. And I was wrong. So now, listen, we're heading into our 8th season, more than 100 episodes. And, one of the things when they first assigned us the show, I thought, man, there's just going to be weeks where there's not that much happening. Well, 120 episodes, and that's never happened, not once. Every week is, what are we going to cut? What are we going to cut? Just because there's so much going on in American politics, and it's at times concerning and scary and existential, but it's important, and it also happens to be pretty highly entertaining.
Right. That's the thing. I think the way you guys present it as well. I've been on your side of that, right? You're the producer for our episode. I think we started negotiating 2 months out, right? I think you were in preseason, and I'll be very candid. If you heard, I was like, yeah, if you bring McKinnon, I only want Mac.
Well, the bottom line is, despite the name of the show, I really believe in the nobility of politics and the pursuit of it, and the people who work behind the scenes, and that's our goal and our ambition of the show, is to show that it's really is important, that it's worthwhile, and that there's a lot going on behind the scenes that people never see that's really important.
I love that, as one of those behind the scenes guys, trying to kind of explain what we do and how it works. It's not always a noble business. You say you're in politics, the conversations get really interesting when you live in Missouri, for example. Very quick, I tell people that I clean stripper poles. It's just more reputable. Really high class. In the good clubs only. I'm like, oh, okay, well, at least you're in a reputable business. But that's politics for you. Well, what's next? Obviously you've got some medical stuff. You've been very open about that.
I've got some long overdue back surgery just so I can keep up the biking and skiing.
Stop crashing bikes.
Air McKinnon is grounded for a little while.
Good. When do you start up filming?
Back in February.
No kidding. That's soon.
Yeah, so we'll be back pretty soon. Like I said, it's hard to go off the air because all our
right.
We're like, why are you off? This is happening. That's happening. There's no good time to go off.
No. Well, let the dust.
We can't. It takes a lot out of us, and it takes a lot to produce the show.
Yeah, you're on the road a lot. So, you guys are all over the country. It's busy. It's just crazy.
Well, we make a documentary in a week. That usually takes 6 months. So
right. It's fascinating. And again,
look at that Lincoln Project documentary. How long that
Yeah. Well, yeah, it took a couple years to get it out. It is
almost 2 years, right?
Yeah, it did. They filmed for just 1 month. That's the kicker. Is just 1 month in Park City, or 2 months, and then it took 2 years to get it out. And I talked to Fisher literally a month before, and he was still working on the final episode of 5. A month out.
So we do that in a week.
Yeah, and I explained that to my colleagues at the Flowers campaign. Like, well, when we can nail it down, I was like, never. When Mark pulls up, we're shooting. And I can just go with it, and that's the way it works.
Thanks for your help. That was a good team.
Oh, it was worked out. It's a really great team. It was a joy to see them, get their.
By the way, our favorite moment, maybe of all time in circus history, and Marjorie Taylor Greene even mentioned this, was from that episode. It was the guy who was being shot out of the cannon.
I knew it.
That was amazing. Just this little fair going on. Yeah, and it was a great little fair, and there was this guy advertising himself as the human cannonball, and it turns out that he is like the guy.
Yeah, he goes around the country.
He owns like all the Guinness Book of World Records for the human cannonball, and they shot this guy out of a cannon
and doing that,
over the Ferris wheel. It was incredible. It was really cool. That was so much fun.
Retail politics, baby, right? you're going to fairs, you're going to ag fairs, you're shaking hands, you're eating corn dogs off camera. Well, it's great. And where can we find you online, Mark, for people hunting you down?
Well, you can get me at M. McKinnon, at M. McKinnon on Twitter and any other social media platforms at M. McKinnon.
Same with FP Wellman for me everywhere I go. This has been a great. I really appreciate your time, Mark. As always, I appreciate the people with the audience. You can find me at FP Wellman on Twitter.
I'm glad you've stayed on the playing field, my friend. Keep kicking it hard and carrying on.
Yeah, I ain't quitting yet, brother. It's they haven't got rid of me yet. I appreciate you. All right, we'll let you go. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Yeah, bye.
Thanks for joining the show. We really appreciate you coming out. As always, you can find us on Democracy Pod on Twitter. You can find us on YouTube, which is also now on Democracy Podcast on our YouTube channel. I am FP Wellman. As always, we have to thank our sponsors, Vi Media. Vi Media is your digital marketing agency partner based right here in the greater St. Louis area. Also nationwide, they can do all of your digital marketing needs, and they've done great work. They've been a great partner for us. You can find them at vi.media, which is VIE.media on the web. I hope you check them out. Like I said, I'm good friends with them. They're going to be helping me out quite a bit as we go forward. I hope you had a wonderful holiday period. We're going to December. Things are going to be interesting. The guests this month, you just saw Mark McKinnon. We've got some incredible guests. Sold out. O'Brien is going to talk about the media. I've got Michael Steele, the former RNC chairman, who's just a character and a brilliant man, is going to join us. Going to have Ruth Ben-Ghiat, who wrote this book, Strong Men, talk about the authoritarian movement. We're probably going to chat in about our friend Ron DeSantis, and so many more lined up. I'm trying to make Matt happy back here by actually scheduling guests weeks out as opposed to the day before and giving him a headache, and myself. So again, the show is just getting rolling. It's getting better and better. I hope you'll tell your friends. I hope you'll smash that subscribe button wherever you get your podcasts or your YouTube channels. This is the place to be, and it's just going to get better. So thanks so much for joining us. As always, on Democracy with FP Wellman, and we'll see you again next week.